Alright, y'all. So today wanted to make a very quick video to talk about the mess that is, of course, this recent Halo Studios drama. I haven't really made too many videos, or if any at all, just because I haven't had the time to kind of research everything and really just have time to sit down and talk about it. But finally got the chance, wanted to give you my thoughts on it. So if you haven't heard lately in the world of Halo, things are getting really messy with Halo Studios. There's being allegations thrown around. A toxic work culture is apparently, really huge at Halo Studios. There's been massive leadership issues. And once again, just more turmoil, and really just sucks to be a Halo fan in general, once again. This all kind of exploded when an ex-employee, an ex-art director who came from the Bungie days, believe it or not, made a pretty scathing post revealing basically all the things that he encountered at Halo Studios, and basically said that there's a really horrible work culture there. There's also a lot of, cronyism being ripe throughout the company. And maybe asking, what is cronyism? Basically, it's the idea of like nepotism. Like, you're hiring your buddies, your friends for jobs, but your friends may not be actually qualified for these positions compared to someone that's actually more qualified. And this is despite the fact that Halo Studios have made job postings on LinkedIn and such, and Indeed probably, of certain roles and positions, but that allegedly these might be just sham job postings, right? These jobs may actually be aligned to their friends and buddies, and that anyone who would actually apply for these job postings would not get selected, despite the fact that they may actually be more qualified. So there's apparently lots of cronyism going around, a toxic work culture, alleged moments of harassment as well that I think the ex-employee mentioned. I think his name was Glenn, and just some really bad things. There's also a lot of retaliatory strikes and attacks on people. Like I said, there's not really a good HR department, and, just a very much toxic workforce culture. This is also kind of further added on to Mr. Rebs Gaming's video, which shout out to Mr. Rebs, awesome channel. I've talked about him many times on this channel. Basically, he made a pretty scathing video himself. He talked with his sources that kind of all said the same things. There's a really toxic workforce culture. There's allegedly some sham job postings, maybe, but there's a lot of cronyism going around. And in general, it's just not a great place to work for a studio. There's also some alleged emails, and I've seen a bunch of articles talk about alleged employees coming out and talking about certain things. One of the big cruxes is that there's just a lot of leadership issues. Leadership is not good. Certain projects are kind of getting greenlit, but there's not really a central person leading those projects. There's not really an experienced, lead or art director on that project, and that obviously leaves a pretty huge vacuum in a mountain of issues down the line if these issues don't get resolved. But it's really bad. There's also been kind of a culture described as the old boys club kind of leadership at a Halo Studios, which is really much characterized by Pierre Hintz, who is the head of Halo Studios. And what I mean by the old boys club kind of vibe, it's kind of like that thing, like, when you were a kid, like the boys club, like your friends are all connecting up, and, it's a very toxic place. I guess I'm trying to find a way to explain what that term kind of means. But, it's kind of like, being a bully to other kids, pushing around. If you're not with the boys club, then you're against it. It just is not really it doesn't really encourage creativity, resistance, change, flexibility. It's just kind of a very, started way of thinking. But it's, regardless, a pretty bad culture from what's being described by these anonymous employees and other people that have actually came out because of Glenn's posting. And this whole situation is just quite troubling, to be honest, especially considering the fact that allegedly the Halo CE remake is going to be coming out in July. And then you're hearing all these ex-employees and allegedly, Glenn and a bunch of anonymous employees coming out about this stuff. It's a really bad look. I even think that Microsoft, I think from what I heard, they also kind of responded to the situation, basically saying something like, oh, we don't talk about individual employee issues publicly or something like that, which, yikes, right? Yikes. Also, Mr. Reb's gaming video I thought was pretty interesting. Kind of talked about the situation that happened with DigSite. Now, I don't know if I talked about, I think I mentioned DigSite a few times on the channel. But basically, they were like one of the best things that Halo had going for it back in like 2023, 2024. They were an awesome set of fans and modders that would basically were given access to cut content from Halo Studios and basically finish it, polish it up, and release it to the public. They famously released the Halo 2 E3 demo. You can play that on Steam now. And, it was a really great thing. And honestly, we know 2024 was a really bad year for Halo. Nothing good news-wise was coming out. And, the DigSite stuff was really the best thing that came out of it. And like everything with Halo Studios or I guess at the time, well, I think at the time they were called Halo Studios. I don't remember. But they squandered that opportunity. The situation with DigSite became more and more unstable because the people that were working on it were restoring these cut levels and these missions and interactions. They couldn't obviously do this and work a full-time job and provide for their families, pay rent. They needed to get paid for their work, which is, I think, a reasonable request. I do think, though, that them becoming employees was a little bit unrealistic. They were apparently initially, I guess, not promised, but there was kind of the idea of, oh, we'll maybe give you contracts if you keep working on this stuff. But apparently Pierre stepped down on the whole situation and said that, you're not going to get anything. Basically, we want you to continue to work on this stuff, but you're going to do all this work for free. And obviously, it became a situation that became untenable for a lot of the people involved. And that's how the DigSite team quietly dissolved because Pierre decided to not give them the opportunity to get paid for their work and was very much egotistical about the whole situation. You're going to do everything for free. And obviously it all kind of blew up in his face. The DigSite content all got leaked at the end of 2024, which did not come from the DigSite team allegedly. It came from the someone higher up. We just obviously don't know. But yeah, man, really sucks. And it's really making it look like this dude that's at the head of Halo Studios, Pierre, is just not a good guy. He doesn't sound like he's a nice guy to work around, to be with. I mean, he has this old, really toxic way of working and hiring his friends. And, it just doesn't sound like he's a good game studio, head, which I think is important, right, to mention. I think you have to have people that want to work with you. You have to have at least a culture of work that encourages collaboration, open ideas, and obviously I'm saying that every game that comes out that has a good work culture turns out great, but usually it tends to be a better game because the people that are actually working on it enjoy what they're making and they're actually working in the company they enjoy to be at. It sounds like Halo Studios is not a good place to be at right now. There's a toxic workforce culture kind of thing going on. The head sounds kind of really egotistical and not a good dude to be around. Honestly, I don't know. This really just dampens my excitement for the Halo CE remake. I am still looking forward to it. I'm going to make more updates and videos on it like always. But it sucks, man. It sucks. Do I feel sorry for any of the leadership at Halo Studios? Absolutely not. I think they should be called out on their BS. I think people need to have accountability. You need to have checks and balances in any organization, which, you would think with a parent company like Microsoft being the parent of it all, you think there would be checks and balances. And usually also in a company, that's what the HR department is for. It sounds like the HR department there is really, really corrupted and compromised. But we'll see how this situation develops. I'll still make videos about the Halo CE remake. But yeah, really dampens my excitement for it. And this whole situation sucks. Sorry for the employees who had to encounter all these alleged things. But, all right. Just want to make a very quick video. Peace, y'all.